And I appreciate my friend and colleague from Wyoming today helping to lead off this discussion about the Keystone XL pipeline, and really, Mr. President, to encourage the Senate to move on this, to do something on this rather than just talk about it. We're sitting here Tuesday afternoon, had a series of votes on judges here this morning. Looks like we're going to have some more this week, but from the view of so many around this country that are worried about jobs, worried about the economy, worried about what is happening with the IRS, with the VA, and not to mention what is happening on the world scene. But it looks like we're going to have yet another unproductive week here in the Senate. And since we're here and we've got time, I can't think of a better time on a better issue to take up than this of the Keystone XL pipeline. The bill that we're asking to be brought up is Senate Bill S-2280. It was introduced by our colleague from North Dakota, Senator Hoeven. He introduced it back in May. It was May 1st, and it was placed on the legislative calendar for a few days. It has 55 co-sponsors here. We talk about bipartisan issues and initiatives within the Senate. 55 is a pretty good number. It includes 11 Democrats, including the chair of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. We're well beyond the House of Representatives, though, on this initiative. They passed a Keystone bill over a year ago, but we have been working in the Energy Committee. We had a Keystone bill that was reported out of the Energy Committee just last week. We passed an original bill on a bipartisan basis. It has not yet been filed, but it's virtually identical to Senator Hoeven's bill that we're discussing here today. But I did vote. I know my colleague from Wyoming, and I know the occupant of the chair here, voted for Senator Landrieu's original bill. I did so because I think that it is good policy to approve the Keystone XL pipeline, and I committed at that hearing, and I certainly commit now, that I'm going to do everything that I can to help advance this initiative. And so if and when her bill is placed on the calendar, I would intend to support that as well. But the problem that we have, and it should be no surprise to most, the problem is that no matter how many Keystone bills are added to the calendar, it appears that the majority leader is going to ignore them. It doesn't matter how long Keystone has been under review. It doesn't matter how many new jobs will be created. It doesn't matter that the delays are political and not substantive. The fact of the matter is we cannot get to that point where we can take up this important initiative. The majority leader could have offered us a vote on Senator Hoeven's bill at any point over these last 6 weeks, but he's chosen not to. And it seems pretty clear to me that he has no intention of moving to it, especially if we just kind of sit back on this and don't push. Now, it may be that that is the will of some in this body, that they don't want us to do anything. They don't want us to push forward. But I think that is contrary to the will, to the wish of 56 members of this chamber. And it's contrary to our national interest here. It's interesting to note, Mr. President, that Democrats were not always opposed to importing crude oil from Canada as they would appear today. Back in 1970, the Nixon administration announced that it would place a quota on Canadian oil imports. And it was none other than Senator Ted Kennedy who led the fight against this decision. And he said in a Senate hearing in March of 1970, Kennedy argued, quote, "The reason why Canadian oil has never been restricted in the past is obvious. Canadian oil is as militarily and politically secure as our own, and thus there can be no national security justification for limiting its importation." Pretty telling words back then, and I think they still hold true today. And it wasn't just Ted Kennedy. There were other Democrats who opposed the Nixon administration's restriction on trade with Canada. Senator Proxmire of Wisconsin, Senator McIntyre of New Hampshire. I think we've had such an opportunity on this floor to debate the merits of the Keystone XL pipeline, to debate not only how many good-paying jobs that they can bring to us, but how it can help this nation and Canada as we work to promote our North American energy independence. Our energy partnership with Canada has taken decades to develop. It's had some rocky times, but all good and worthy relationships take a little bit of work to maintain. And so if the Obama administration is unwilling to do the hard work of diplomacy and make this remarkably easy decision, approving a job-creating and a security-enhancing pipeline, then I think it's time for Congress to act. And that's why, Mr. President, a few of us have gathered here today to move this issue forward, to do more than just talking about it, but to get the United States Senate to the point where we might actually have an opportunity to vote on it and do some good for this country. So we're sitting here waiting. We've got an opportunity to do it. And I think that we should end the delay. I think we should move forward with this bill.
I agree, Mr. President. I will tell you, just think about what happened last week. Extremists from the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, a terrorist group, attacked the largest oil refinery in Iraq. It's a terrorist group that was actually kicked out of al-Qaeda for being too extreme. And it's a striking reminder, Mr. President, to all of us in this chamber, to all of us in this nation, a striking reminder of how important it is for the United States to take swift action to increase energy production here in North America. Energy security is key. President Obama essentially conceded the point last week during the press conference when he announced that he was sending troops back into Iraq. He said he was asked what Iraq's civil war is in terms of national security interest of the United States, and he gave a couple of reasons. He said, quote, obviously issues like energy and global energy markets continue to be important. You know, I would just say, Mr. President, despite the urgency, the President refuses to take steps to reduce the effect that Iraq's oil can have on American national security in the future. The President admits that energy is a national security interest of the United States, but he refuses to do anything about it that is meaningful. What does the President and the administration think should happen? You know, the President was asked a week or so ago, as a result of a huge spike in oil prices, a barrel of oil as a result of what was happening with ISIS in the Middle East. He said, what about all of this? And he said, you know, that he was concerned, but he said, quote, that the Gulf should pick up the slack and produce more oil. Not North America, not the United States, the Gulf. He was talking about the Persian Gulf should pick up the slack. You know, Vice President Biden put out a plan last week to support energy production, but not in the United States, in the Caribbean. You know, America shouldn't be asking for more energy from the Caribbean or the Persian Gulf. We should be producing more energy on our own, in our own Gulf Coast, on offshore, on federal lands, in Alaska. And that's why last week the Energy and Natural Resources Committee passed legislation approving construction of Keystone XL pipeline. The bill passed the committee, as the ranking member said, bipartisan support. Even Democrats voted for it. That bill will send oil from Canada and the United States like North Dakota, and the senator from North Dakota is here on the floor. We'll send oil from Canada and North Dakota to refiners in Texas and Louisiana. Last week, Democrats in the committee voted for this bill, talked about how important it is. The Keystone XL pipeline application has been pending for more than 5 years. The State Department has done 5 environmental reviews of the project. All five have been found that the Keystone XL pipeline will cause no significant environmental impacts. We should not delay this project any longer. Democrats should push their party leaders to vote on this important bill. You know, I'm disappointed, I know my colleagues are, that Senate Democrats up to this point have chosen to block this important bill. I think it's outrageous the way a small group of Democrats refuse even to consider having a debate on this vital measure. Energy security for our country, energy at home. America needs the jobs. We need the energy. According to the U.S. State Department, this bill would support thousands and thousands of jobs. Energy is a national security issue for the United States, and this bill would help produce energy here in North America, not where the President said they'll pick up the slack in the Persian Gulf. The bill's on the calendar right now. The Democrat Majority Leader can bring it up for a vote, and we're going to ask him to do so today. The chair of the Energy Committee should be calling on the Majority Leader, demand that he act on the bill. We are here in the Senate, we get elected to the Senate to vote. The Keystone XL pipeline is important, this bill is important. Democrats who want to vote against it can make their arguments, cast their vote. So I turn to my friend and colleague, the senator from North Dakota, a senator who has been an incredible leader as a former governor of the state, a senator who knows the issue well, who knows the value of American energy, U.S. energy, North American energy, the impact on jobs, the impact of an economy, the impact of energy as a geopolitical weapon in what's happening around the world. So I asked my friend and colleague from North Dakota if he thinks there is any reason whatsoever to delay action on this bill, or if we should just move ahead. And I see the senator from Oklahoma has also joined us. So there's obviously significant and growing voices coming to the floor to say it's time to vote now. Not additional delay, not additional studies, not additional talk, time to vote. So I turn to my friend and colleague from North Dakota, the former governor of North Dakota, I think the longest serving governor in the history of the state, for his impression of why it's time to vote today.
Mr. President.
Senator from North Dakota.
I'd like to thank the esteemed senator from Wyoming, not only for being here today to talk about this important issue, but for his tremendous leadership on energy issues. Wyoming produces an incredible amount of energy for this country, and the senator from Wyoming well knows that you not only have to produce that energy, you have to get it to market. And you need pipelines to move oil and gas to market. We move some by truck, some by train, but we can't move everything by truck and by train. We've got to have pipelines, and that's what this is all about. The Keystone XL pipeline is the latest, greatest technology that is the most efficient and the safest way to move this product to market, and will actually result in less greenhouse gas than if we don't build the pipeline, as was determined by the administration's own environmental impact statement produced by the Department of State. I have some additional comments I'd like to make on this important issue, but first I'd like to turn to the esteemed senator from Oklahoma and ask that he provide some of his comments and insights from a state that produces an incredible amount of energy and where actually hydraulic fracturing started in this country and has been done safely since, I think, the 1950s. Somebody who understands not only that we have to produce energy in this country so that we can get to energy independence, but that we've got to have the infrastructure to move that product safely to market. So with that, I would turn to the distinguished senator from Oklahoma and ask his thoughts on this important issue as well.
Thank you, and I do appreciate that. I might elaborate a little bit.
Senator from Oklahoma.
Oklahoma is not just the place where they first started hydraulic fracturing. That was Duncan, Oklahoma, 1948. And there's never been, according to the Lisa Jackson, who is the Obama-appointed EPA director, never have been a confirmed case of groundwater contamination. Let me do this. I know we're getting strapped for time here, and I regret that. I want to draw your attention to the chart, that what I'm holding up here. It happened that Cushing, Oklahoma is considered to be the crossroads of the pipelines throughout the United States. And in Cushing, Oklahoma, we had the first, I guess the only trip that President Obama has ever made to Oklahoma. He came into Oklahoma, and with all, look in the background, you've got all the tubes up there, and to dramatically make a statement. And that statement, I'm going to read it here, even though you can read it with me. It says, I am directing my administration to cut through the red tape, break through the bureaucratic hurdles, and make this project, the Keystone, a priority to go ahead and get it done. That's what the president said in Oklahoma. Now, I wasn't there, but that's what he said. That's a direct quote. Then he went and did everything he could do to destroy the Keystone pipeline. Now, he made the statement down there. He said, I'm not going to do anything to create a problem for the southern leg that goes from Cushing down into Texas. Well, there's a reason for that. And the reason is he couldn't do it. The reason he's stopping it up there, because it crosses a country line from Canada to the United States. He has some jurisdiction there, but there's nothing he could do to stop it. So he came down to tell us that he wasn't going to do that. I just have to say to the president, people in Oklahoma aren't that dumb. They know that you didn't have the authority or you would have stopped it. The portion between Canada and Cushing is the part that remains stalled. And at this point, I think the reason is one guy named Tom Steyer. And if you haven't heard of him before, let me introduce you to him. That's upside down. First of all, you hear a lot of things about the Koch brothers and other people who are putting money or are concerned about. This is the most, this actually is a statement made by this very wealthy person. I'm sure he's a nice person. Tom Steyer is a multi-billionaire. He's a very liberal. He's from the state of California, the state of my good friend from the senior senator from California, junior senator. And he has made the statement that he is going to put up $100 million to spend in campaigns of people who would do two things. One, try to resurrect the issue of global warming, which is dead on the line. I can remember back when global warming would be polled as the #1 or #2 problem in the country. Right now, it's, according to last week's Gallup poll, it's number 14 out of 15. So that's a dead issue. But $100 million to do two things. First of all, resurrect that issue, and secondly, to stop the Keystone Pipeline. A few weeks ago, he said explicitly, and I want to say, these are his words, not mine, it is true that we, quote, it is true that we expect to be heavily involved in midterm elections. We are looking at a bunch of races. My guess is that we'll end up being involved in 8 or more races. We just learned this week that as the president marks his 1-year anniversary of his climate action plan, Tom Steyer is going to meet personally with him. So there's $100 million at work right there, if that's what it takes for a meeting. Well, and we all know what the cost would be, and this is the thing that is very important. We know, and this is one thing that has not been refuted, way back in the beginning of the whole global warming thing, they talked about the cost is going to be somewhere between $300 and $400 billion a year. Well, that was the Wharton Economics Foundation, the MIT, Charles Rivers, everyone agrees with that. The Keystone Pipeline, which Tom Steyer wants to stop, would create 42,000 jobs, and tens of thousands more would be supported in the manufacturing sector. But Keystone is just the tip of the iceberg. If you look at this chart number 3, you can see all of the domestic energy resources that are being developed around the country right now. And we're going through a shale revolution in America, and the only thing that is getting in the way is the federal government. This is what's interesting. In the last 6 years, oil production on private and state lands is up 61%. On federal land, however, oil production is down 6%. Now, how could that be? This map shows throughout the United States, not all in the western part. Look at New York and Pennsylvania. This is where the development's coming from. All of it on state and private land, an increase in 5 years, 5.5 years, of 61%. At the same time, on federal land, it's down by 6%. The IFC International, a well-respected consulting firm, released a report last month that said U.S. companies will need to invest $641 billion over the next 20 years of infrastructure to keep up with the growing oil and gas production. Now, what does it mean for jobs? According to the analysis, the spending on these new pipelines alone will create 432,000 direct jobs, and that's based on a conservative estimate that does not assume we develop all of the resources in our country. If that were included, it'd be a lot more. So keeping this from happening would be a great impact for imposing anti-energy global warming policies. We need to build the Keystone Pipeline and provide regulatory certainty for the entire energy infrastructure sector. And without it, we'll never reach energy independence. Right now, we know.
Has expired?
How much time is remaining on our side?
33 minutes is remaining on the Republican side, but the request for the colloquy time has expired.
I see. I ask unanimous consent. I be given 4 more minutes.
Is there objection?
To object, isn't,
Senator from California,
what time do we have a vote here?
4:30.
4:30, ma'am.
Okay, well, the reason we were very careful with our time, and we gave my good friends, and they are my good friends, a lot of extra time, I'll allow the senator to proceed for a minute, but after that, we need equal time on this. So I'd give him 1 minute.
Well, without objection, the senator's asked for 4 minutes.
I asked for 1 minute, I'd approve that, but we don't have the time.
There's an objection to the
Chairman,
1 minute.
I could ask Mr. Chairman if we could compromise to 2 minutes.
Let me think it over. Okay.
Okay. Without objection.
Well,
2 minutes
I
to be granted.
appreciate my good friend from California thinking that over. Anyway, I just want to mention 432,000 direct jobs, and when you stop and think about it, keeping it from happening would really have the effect of stopping us from becoming oil independent, and we could do that. The Keystone pipeline needs to be built. We all know about the jobs, but more importantly, there's not a single good reason why it shouldn't happen. Tom Steyer's goal is to stop the oil in Canada from being developed, but he can't do it. The Canadians have already, and we've seen this just in the last week, they have conversations going where they are with China to have them accept this if we don't complete our Keystone pipeline. With that, I'll yield the floor.